you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 318. Today we're hanging at Bob and AJ's Archery World, talking what else, bow hunting whitetails, and reviewing a few of the new Flagship bows for 2023. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. It is a little bit of a sad day this past week, as I kind of came to the realization that my late season hunting is likely over for the most part. I would say probably 90% sure that I'm not going to get another chance to make my way out. This past weekend had some obligations. So wasn't able to get out. And the next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, have some more obligations that I need to kind of take care of. So not going to get out. And that, at that point, the statewide or the PA late season is kind of done at that point. So the North piece, unfortunately, between the freeze of the weather earlier, in December when I had some time off that made the roads impassable, and then just my personal family schedule, kind of meant that I, didn't make my way back up there for late season like I was hoping to this year. The season here locally in the special regs unit is open a little bit longer, but still I've yet to, locate a buck that I'd be, willing to go out and chase, and I don't have any more doe tags to fill. So it looks like my off-season preparation and scouting will start a lot sooner for next year than I was really kind of anticipating. I've actually kind of started doing that. This past weekend, I actually started kind of fiddling with some gear, doing the beginning the checklist of, is there anything I'm going to replace this year? What needs fixed, updated, etc. Started doing that, thinking of making a couple changes to a few pieces. If you guys listen to the episode I did with Curtis Zabel, we talked but we talked some about self-filming and stuff. And I'm going to make, I think, one more attempt this year, this upcoming season, to do that. And so I'm kind of looking at my gear with that lens as to how do I reduce, bulk, weight even further? What can I get rid of that I maybe sometimes use that stays in my pack, but, really isn't worth keeping in just to kind of reduce, any fiddle factor or whatever. And so I'm kind of going through that now, trying to figure out how I'm going to kind of manage that, which is always kind of fun because I'm a little bit of a gear nerd. So I do enjoy that stuff. And, of course, start thinking about, any bows that you might want to, trade in, update, get a new bow, what bows are out there, what's a good shooter for this year. And that's a lot of what we talk about in this episode. If you haven't yet, I actually did a whole YouTube video review on a bunch of Flagship bows out at my buddy Bob and AJ's archery shop. I headed out there with my buddy Wilson. We shot a bunch of bows, made a video of it. We shot six different Flagship bows. We talk about them during the course of this podcast. But if you want to see the actual reviews of them, you can head to YouTube, to the Truth from the Stand YouTube channel, and watch and watch that video. And then one last thing to kind of give you guys an update on before we jump into today's show is, it's funny when you have like a hunting podcast, you'll have different people reach out to you that say, hey, I'd like to be part of the show, or would like to, I'll use air quotes, quote unquote, sponsor the show, or maybe, have you mention the, X product in during the course of the podcast or whatever the case is. And, I'm very kind of selective. I don't want to bombard you guys with stuff that's irrelevant. And so I try to keep things to, only things that I use, that I believe in, and that are good people. And so that's why, the partners that I have are the partners that I have, and that you don't see that list change very often. But this past, fall, a beer company reached out to me, and, as anybody else, I do enjoy a good beer, but I'm not, I'm not so much invested in, a craft brewery or whatever that, that I've sought out having a beer kind of, partner, if you will. But this particular beer company reached out to me, and it really kind of struck a chord with me because there was actually some history there. And it's actually Genesee Beer is a new partner of the show. So you'll hear them at the end of the given some props at the end of the episode, and then of course during the course of the hunting season and stuff, you'll likely see me post some stuff about Genesee Beer. But they're from New York, which is super rad. So they're regional, if you will, and they're a super old brewery, so they have history. It's a U.S. beer. But more importantly, the connection for me was when I was growing up. My uncle had a hunting camp called Boudico. And it wasn't far from his house. It was kind of just, down this little dirt road from his house. And my Uncle Randy and my Uncle Rick and my dad used to go to that hunting camp. And I don't even know how it got its name. There was a small pond that was there when I say pond, it's like I use that term very loosely. And it was called Boudico Pond. And I have no clue why it was called that. And so that became the Boudico Hunting Camp. And the one thing that I remember as a kid growing up was like I couldn't wait to be able to go to hunting camp to hang out with my dad and my uncles. Not that it was anything lavish. I mean, it was like a wood shack, and there was an old, I don't even know what, it was probably like 60s, like piece of shit travel trailer that was connected to it. And they had the wood shack kind of connected to the travel trailer through the sliding glass door that was on the travel trailer. That was the door into the travel trailer. And these two pieces were connected. An old wood stove in it. There was an old TV in it with rabbit ears that you could get like maybe 2 channels that were kind of fuzzy, and we would watch football games on those. And I remember when I was a kid, like I couldn't wait till I got old enough to where my dad would start taking me to the camp with my uncles, and then my one uncle's buddy Jimmy used to come up from Delaware sometimes and stay with him as well. And nothing crazy ever went on there. It was just usually those four guys, and they would sit around, they'd play cards, and they would have some beverages as people do at hunting camp. But the one thing that I always remember is there was always 2 beverages that were constants. There was Jenny Lights, and my Uncle Randy always had a bottle of George Dickel. And those were the staples of hunting camp. And so my earliest memories of hunting camp, as far as beverages being consumed, was Genesee beer and George Dickel. And so when Genesee actually reached out to me and said, hey, is there an opportunity that we could maybe do some stuff with you? My answer was yes, because I had this historical connection to them. I dig the beer. Genesee Cream Ale, my buddy Chad, he suggests drinking it warm, so I'm going to have to give that a try. But there was a historical connection there with my family and the first hunting camp that I ever knew, that was kind of a staple of that camp. So you'll probably hear some stuff from Genesee over the course of time. I just want to kind of give you guys a heads up. If you're so inclined and you dig Genesee beer, go ahead and pick some up. Of course, if you're of legal drinking age, 21 years or older, and make sure you're drinking and enjoying it responsibly. And if you want to check out any of the stuff they have going on, you can head to their website as well and check out all the merch and stuff that they have as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Killer show out at Bob and AJ's. We talk bows. We talk bow hunting. AJ talks a little bit about coming back from a tough miss, even though he's an accomplished competitive archer. Sometimes even the good guys make bad shots. And we talk a little bit about that and do a bunch of gear review talk. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Today, you're in for a treat because we are on location at my good buddy AJ's shop, Bob and AJ's. It's my hometown shop, and we have on he used to be a regular before he went and left me. I got my good buddy Wilson on from Idaho. He's in for the holidays visiting family. What's going on, fellas?
What's up, guys?
I come back to Pennsylvania and have to just come to the archery shop. I say to my wife, they need me over there. So I got to go spend some time.
Yeah, so, we miss you, buddy.
Yeah. He said whenever he was coming in, he was like, I was like, when are you getting in? He was telling me, he's like, Christmas Eve, I think it was, you were getting in.
Yeah.
He's like, and I got to go straight to AJ's shop. He's like, I think I'm gonna set up some bows for him. He's like, he's put me to work as soon as I get into town. So
yeah, we had a packed schedule when we got in because they canceled out on how many flights over this holiday weekend. So we barely made it in. And then it was like Christmas, and then we had a small break, and I was like, see ya.
Yeah. Now we're in the shop.
Yeah,
and he did get to kill some deer. I was like, man, he didn't waste any time getting his Pennsylvania on.
Yeah, I took my brother-in-law out. He's killed one deer, and he said, I want to go get some meat. So we went out and killed a deer, and someone texted me and said, leave our Pennsylvania deer alone.
Nice. But you just wrapped up the Idaho. Is it done? Is your elk season over now?
Yep, we're done.
Done. So
sad.
It's sad.
But I hunted every season. We got early archery. We get a little gun season. We got a muzzleloader season. Then we have a late archery.
But you did fill your first deer tag, Idaho deer tag.
Yeah, that was super fun. That was like, I felt like I was a high school kid for a second because my buddy texted me and said, hey, let's go take our rifles for a walk.
All right.
So we just walked through the woods with rifles. And
how many days do you think you had in the elk woods?
Oh, I think I counted. It was like 36 days.
Wow.
36 hunts. So like not full days because sometimes I would take like a half day and hunt, but
yeah,
lots of overnights.
Yeah,
by myself.
And the last one, you were like literally snowshoeing. The last couple.
Yeah. Well, I went to check a trail camera, and I got like that. I got a cold, and so I was pretty sick. And I got the snowshoes, and I couldn't. I was like halfway to the trail camera. I turned around and I went back to my truck because I was like, I can't make it. I'm out of shape. It was like 10 degrees.
Your Sherpa feet didn't help you out that day?
No, my feet felt fine, but
I call them Sherpa feet because people listening, I don't think we even mentioned it when we did the podcast when we were actually on the mountain in the elk woods. But Wilson descended, I don't even know how many vertical feet it is to get down, but it's like a 2 mile plus walk down that trail with a 60-pound pack in Birkenstock sandals
and bare feet.
And bare feet.
That's good for your ankles.
Yeah. They feel fine.
They feel fine. Yeah. Well, wait till you're my age. They won't feel fine anymore. You keep doing that.
Yeah. I got bad lungs, but my toes are
rock
toes
solid.
Of terror.
Right. Nice. How was your season, AJ? Man, I know whenever I mean, the last time you and I actually saw each other was right before I was actually leaving to go to Wilson's.
Right.
And then the hunting season gets in the way. So this is the first time I've been able to get out to the shop since then. But I know you had some new stuff going on in Pennsylvania, and then you and I were texting, I think right after I got back from Kansas. You were in Ohio at that point.
Yeah.
So how was PA? How was that new piece? Like
the new piece, it fell through.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we opted out of the lease.
Oh, okay.
The property looked phenomenal. It just wasn't what we paid for.
Right.
They were working, and there's a lot of active work going on, so we had to kind of opt out of that. So I went from all my attention being focused there to realizing this isn't happening, and had to go to plan B, C, and D, and so forth. But PA, I can't complain. Everybody kind of thinks I just pick up a bow, walk out in the woods, and shoot a giant buck. Well, I had 2 really great encounters this year. I let 2 arrows go, and I did not retrieve either one of those deer.
Damn.
So that was kind of tough.
So I was one of those people. I was like, AJ pick up his bow, just walks outside.
Yeah.
They fall over for him.
But I did shoot a handful of does. I got a couple days in at Maryland, and I killed a bunch of deer down there. So.
How did those hunts play out with those two in PA? I mean, were those deer that you were aware of, or were they just more of like good spots that you kind of knew that you needed to be in?
The one deer I knew of quite well. And once I got him patterned, I sat on him and he rolled right in.
Really?
I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity.
Right. What week was that, or was that?
That was early. That was the first week of October.
Okay. Wow.
And then right at Halloween, I was hunting another private property. And honestly, it was one of those sets where you just felt like it was going to be a disaster. I went into these woods for the first time with my climber, and I literally had to climb 3 different trees until I could get into a tree that I could get high enough in
Right.
and have a little bit of visibility. And I was still sweating. I didn't, and I'm screwing in my bow hook, and I look over, and here's this big 9-pointer coming right out of a thicket, and again, perfect opportunity, 14 yards, dead broadside, and then I shouldered him.
Man. Now, you might not have been sweating so much if I can get you in a saddle.
I think I'd be sweating more.
But if anyone's seen AJ use a climber, he can climb
anything.
Yeah.
Pretty much one of those things. Yeah.
These woods, the trees were just all huge.
Really?
And I have extra large straps, so in my brain, always feel like, I'll be able to get up there. And here I'm just strapped to a tree sitting on my climber, and I can't even budge the platform.
Oh, geez.
So it was kind of, okay, let's take it all apart and go try another one.
So, I mean, I don't want to relive bad wounds necessarily, but I think it's always a good opportunity, especially like on the podcast and stuff like that. You know, when I'm talking to guys who are, you know, because everyone goes through situations where they either struggle with their shot or they're a good shot and they hit a deer bad or for whatever reason, you know what I mean? And you're a guy who's shot competitively, an accomplished shooter, a great archer, great hunter, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. So, like, what kind of happened in that shot? Like, I'm sure you thought about it afterwards. It's like, well, this is the mistake I made, or whatever it was.
Honestly, I went through this about 5 years ago, and I had to get away from my index finger release, which I tend to shoot very well. It's just what I've always shot with. It's what I'm comfortable with.
Even when you shot competitively, that's what you...
Yeah. And about 5 years ago, I had to put that away, and I hunted with a hinge style release. And that did help me a lot. What happened this year with those 2 situations where I think I was just so overconfident that I just didn't focus on my shot, didn't focus on aiming, and just let muscle memory kick in.
Right.
Like it kind of should.
Right.
But I just lost my focus in the excitement. I mean, you know, I'll be the first to admit, I crumble. I completely crumble. When I see bone that I know I'm going to shoot, I can't breathe. I mean, my heart is in my throat.
Which is crazy to think of, because you look around the shop here and it's like big deer, big deer, big deer, big deer, big deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess if I didn't get that feeling to this day, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, you know?
Right.
But yeah, it was just one of those things where I think I was just too overconfident. A few days after my second wound in Pennsylvania, I went down to Maryland and just took my time on every shot opportunity that came in front of me. Right. And I talked myself through the shot, and I pinwheeled every deer, perfect shots. I mean, I watched them all crash and burn.
Right.
So it was just, you know, I just had to slow myself down.
Right. What's your shot sequence like? I know everyone's a little bit different. It's interesting because I think maybe new archers or newer archers think that, you know, they get to a point and they don't have to have that shot sequence anymore, right? Like it kind of goes by the wayside and they kind of go to the muscle, like the memory aspect of it, right? And it's interesting, a guy who's been doing it as long as you still talks himself through. That's that's just a point for like people who are newer at it. It's like that doesn't ever stop. Like you should just always kind of talk. So what's that sequence for you? Do you say like some dirty words in there?
On the bad shots, I can't say there was much of a shot sequence.
Right. But whenever you're breaking good and like and you have your sequence dialed in, like
I just have to talk to myself. I tell myself to slow down. I tell myself to aim, get the pin where you need it, hold it, and, you know, pull through that shot.
Right.
The one deer in Pennsylvania that I shouldered, he's alive and well. Honestly, I don't even think I aimed. I know I drew the bow, and that's all I remember.
Right.
I don't remember actually aiming on that deer, unfortunately.
Right.
So I get, I think, almost overconfident with my equipment. I shoot daily. I shoot all the time.
Yeah.
I shoot far just to make the close shots easy.
Right.
And I think it was just honestly being overconfident.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I've ever been overconfident, you know, with my bow, because I don't shoot nearly as much as you, and you've shot, you know, competitively, and I've never, you know, have never done that. But I know what you're talking about, where it's like I feel like some of the shots that I've taken that didn't work out, whether it was a clean miss or a wound or whatever, you know, I think back to it, I'm like, I don't remember actually, you know, like when I'm target shooting, I'm practicing, it's like I have a shot sequence and I'll pick out like a spot on the target, like the aim small, miss small. And I'm like, and I try to focus on that. I don't try to hold the pin. I let it hover, let it do what it's going to do. You know what I mean? But I'm just looking at that one thing. Yeah. And I'm good. And it's like, you get into the deer woods and it's like so much is going on, or the elk woods or whatever woods it is that you're in, that you're bow hunting. And sometimes you just kind of lose that focus. You know, it's hard to kind of retain that, you know, whenever you're in that moment. But
yeah, I felt it in the elk woods because I drew my bow quite a few times on elk. Mm-hmm. And the one time, you know, he came in and the cow came behind me and blew, and then everything ran away. And I realized like I had my bow anchored, like almost coming through my eyeball. Because in the whitetail woods, you see this deer coming in, you know, okay, it's going to go behind this bush or tree and I'm going to draw. And yeah, I feel like I had a lot more time. And then the elk woods, it was like, draw right now. And you're just looking at what's happening with the elk and not realizing what's happening with your bow. And the one time literally my string is like coming across the top of my nose, like between my eyeball and my nose. And I was like, I would have shot and not even been close.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing this because we get excited, you know? Yeah. I mean, otherwise, why else would we do everything we do?
Why else go out in like 20-degree weather?
I mean, in Ohio, I sat literally almost 60 hours in a tree stand. And we were anywhere from 18 degrees. I think the warmest they got was 28. Mm-hmm. I was in snow, sleet, and rain. And I killed a buck out there the last day. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point, it was 3 o'clock. And I had been in the tree since an hour before daylight. Right. And I was covered in snow throughout the day, covered in ice throughout the day. When that shot came, my pin was stuck like low on his like belly line. Mm-hmm. And I could not pick it up. And I'm like, come on, man, higher, 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 higher. And finally I got it to where I felt like I was high enough and my shot started to break down a little bit and I fired and I ended up killing the deer, but it wasn't the prettiest shot in the world.
Right.
But yeah, it's, you know, and I was shaking so bad.
Right. Now, do you think was it the weather? Do you think in part, or
I think I was frozen?
Frozen.
Yeah, like I literally had 2 different layers of like the warmest Sika gear on that you can possibly buy. Right. Had both of those on plus under layers, and I got the full draw. And of course, my back elbows hitting a tree, and like nothing was working the way I wanted it to work. And yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, it's those are the worst. Like I like to hunt. I like to hunt when the weather's right for the time of year. You know what I mean? Like October when you get like a cold front or whatever. When I still don't have to be all layered up. You know what I mean? Because that's the one thing that I'll admit that I don't practice enough in the summer. Because who wants to be out in like a big bulky jacket in your yard or whatever shooting in July or August just to get used to like having the layers on when it finally gets cold out 4 months from now. Right. You know what I mean? But it's probably something we should all do because that's ultimately what ends up happening, right? It's like
and if you're gonna elk hunt with me in September, you gotta practice just in your underwear.
Totally, because that was brutally hot, man.
It was like 92 or 90. I think it was like 96 one day.
Yeah, there were days we were wearing shorts, like when we were just glassing, like we were wearing shorts to glassing points and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure. But the reason why we're actually at Bob and AJ's is catch up with AJ, but in Wilson, but is also. We came out and we shot a bunch of bows. So the video will either be out now or it'll be coming out shortly on the YouTube channel where we reviewed a bunch of different bows just to kind of check out flagship bows this year and see how they compare to things that we've shot in the past, things we've shot last year, and just, you know, see what changes they've made. So wanted to kind of do a rundown of like the things that we shot, tell you a little bit about how Wilson and I feel about them just based on our experience shooting those today. And then also just get some of the straight dope from AJ, just from the actual mechanics of the bow, anything that has changed, and just things of note, just generally speaking. So I'll kick it off first, and we're going to start with the Hoyt RX-7, which, you know, I think, Wilson, you mentioned when we were talking on the video that, you know, one of the things you liked about what Hoyt did was that they just basically came out and said, look, this bow's a banger, and everyone has loved it, and so we didn't really change a whole lot on it, and we have a huge demand for it, so have at it kind of thing, right? And it's an awesome shooting bow. That's what I shot for the past year. I think 3 of us shot that this past year. So,
yeah, and I'm not like me, and you. It's like we're not affiliated with anybody,
No.
And so one thing that frustrated me while I was working at an archery shop, and now I do archery stuff at my house in Idaho, is when a company would come out with the same bow, just different
letter on it.
Yeah. And I really appreciated that Hoyt was like, because this is my first year shooting a Hoyt, they said, hey, this bow rocks, and everybody loves it.
Yeah.
So here it is again.
Yeah.
And AJ turned us both onto it because you and I have both been Mathews guys.
Yeah, and
for a
AJ
while.
called me and was like, you got to shoot this bow.
Yeah. And you've even been a Mathews guy, kind of historically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I shot Elite for a lot of years, and then I did shoot a number of Mathews.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I was always kind of anti-Hoyt. As a shop owner, I've always wanted to be able to sell bows that were easy bows to shoot, forgiving bows to shoot.
Right.
Hoyt historically has been more of a aggressive bow, more of an aggressive draw cycle, a very short valley. I mean, kind of, if you relax a little bit at full draw, just wants to rip your shoulder out.
Right.
Where last year when we started with Hoyt, they came out with a whole new platform and redesigned that bow top to bottom. And I mean, they built a phenomenal bow. I mean, they stepped out of their box that they were kind of in. If, in my opinion, they're sort of building the same bow over and over.
Right.
And then they just redesigned everything from the riser to the cam to the grip angle. I mean, you name it, they rebuilt it.
Right.
And now I can take a 70-pound Hoyt at full draw and hold it out in front of me.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the 70-pounders that we've sold last year, guys are coming back within weeks and ordering 80-pound limbs.
Right.
Just because they're so smooth to draw.
Yeah.
When in previous years, we've put 80-pound limbs on other brand bows.
And guys can't budge
And
them.
I can't even hardly get it back.
Yeah.
So that's saying a lot.
Yeah, that's the 70-pound Hoyt, because that's what mine is, too. It's the easiest pulling 70-pound, because I actually, on my Mathews previously, I actually went down. I think I was shooting like 62 or something like that. And you were like, pull this bow back. And I was like, well, what is it? And you were like, it's set at 70. And I was like, man, that's going to be a stiff pull. And you're like, just try it. And I was able to actually pull that Hoyt easier than I was able to pull my 62-pound Mathews.
Yeah, I mean, they made a really amazing cam. The HBX Pro cam, I mean, it's just so smooth. It's fast. I mean, there's no jump to it.
Which is the thing that shocked me, because I had shot all the Hoyts I had shot previously. To your point, I just wasn't a big fan of them. Like, they had a lot of hand shock. They felt like they wanted to jump out of my hand because they were so light. You know, they weren't very dead. They had that, like what you like to call that, like carbon thump. You know what I mean? And this bow had none of that. No. And that's kind of what blew me away, because it was actually more dead in my hand than my heavy Mathews was. Yeah. You know, and so for it to have, less material, less weight, and completely bare, and be as dead as my rigged out Mathews from the year before, was saying something to me. Yeah. But, that's of course a carbon fiber. And we'll just jump to the other carbon fiber, which was the Elite era, right? That's the other carbon fiber that we shot.
Elite's first.
Elite. The Elite era. But yeah, so that one, we shot that one. I don't think Wilson shot that one.
No, I shot
You did?
Yeah, I shot the Elite.
You did?
Darton,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes I'm a bad person on bow reviews, because I like archery so much that I could find something good about every bow I shoot.
Right. And they are all good.
And they're all good.
Yeah, because we're talking about all flagship bows here, so it's not like
I shot the new bear bows, and you don't carry bear.
No.
And I was like, I can find something. I was like, this is a great shooting bow.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, there's different things. I felt like the Hoyt checked off more boxes for me.
Right.
But the Elite era, all those things, I could find, like, if you were like, this is your bow to shoot, I'd find something to love about it, and I would shoot it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Any one of the bows that we shot today, I could take hunting with me next year, and I'd feel good about it. There wasn't like one that would be like, I can't shoot this thing.
Yeah.
And nobody's going backwards. Everybody's going forward, and some companies are going forward in small steps. Other companies are going forward in bigger steps.
Right.
Whether the consumer likes it or not, I mean, that's kind of the cool thing, is there's something for everybody.
Right.
There's a price point that fits everybody, and all the bows are good.
Right.
You know.
So the elite era, the elite era, carbon bow, 31.25 inches, I think. Right. What was the brace height on that one?
That's 7.25.
7. So all the bows that we shot were right around 6 for the most part, except for that one.
They were
right?
all, well, your RX-7, 6.25.
6.25. So a little bigger brace height on this one. The draw cycle on the elite was smooth. There was just a little hump when you got to the back, not a big one, not super noticeable, but it was pretty smooth. But you did notice those things that you would probably get classically with a carbon fiber bow, right? There was just a little bit more hand shock in it. There was a little bit more of that thump. Still a good shooting bow, but when you start getting into like the nitty gritty, like, you know, when you're comparing flagship bows, like you're really kind of splitting the hairs, right? Because they all kind of do something a little bit different. But that was a really good shooting bow. But to, I think, Wilson's point, it probably just wouldn't check quite as many of the boxes for me as something that, you know, hitting every kind of mark for me.
And draw cycle is one of my biggest boxes, because when you're drawing on an animal, you don't want anything to take your focus away from the animal, right? So when you draw a bow, that when you get into your back wall and your bow's moving around, I don't care how strong you are or how steady you are, like if you dump into that back wall and your bow's shaking, your pin's all over the place, and now you have to refocus yourself to get anchored. And that's why I liked Mathews a lot, because I was so comfortable with that draw cycle.
But whenever you watch me shoot that
to different bows, like the RX-7, I can look at a point on the wall and draw that bow right to my anchor point, and that pin is rock solid.
Yeah.
And I don't have to like because you hear guys say, well, I had to draw and then settle my pin. But the RX-7, my pin is settled when I come to anchor.
Right.
Like the bow, the riser's not going back and forth.
Yeah.
Your string's not shaking on your face. It was just a solid settle into your back wall.
And that's just the difference, like what you were saying. Like there's something for everybody. It's just a matter of what you like.
And we have a buddy who shoots elite, and I could shoot his elite, and I'm like, man, I don't know, I can't get that to be a settle in my pin.
Right.
But when he draws, it's solid.
Yeah.
Right. For me, it's like we were talking about it earlier. For me, it's the hand shock is what I don't like. Like I can deal with the dump, you know, into the back wall or whatever. What I don't want, because where I break my concentration that I've noticed shooting over the years is actually after release the arrow, having a tendency of like wanting to drop my hand,
right,
and then maybe not pick up my arrow. And so if I have hand shock, it's not like it frightens me, but it's just like, oh, you know what I mean? And I lose track of where my arrow is going for like a second. And for me, I have to watch my arrow. Like I try to watch it like hit exactly where I was aiming. And that's when I know that I've concentrated, you know, and found the spot or whatever. So for me, it's always hand shock, because that's the part that distracts me the most. But what did you think of how do you feel about the elites there, AJ? Or the era?
I mean, they did something completely different this year, which was kind of put out a speed bow. Where elite has never been known for speed. They've been known for shootability. So the cam is much, much more aggressive than elite has ever had, which some people are going to like and some people aren't. Your hardcore elite guys, I feel, aren't going to like the Omnia or the Era.
Right, and the Omnia is the aluminum one.
Yeah. So it's the same cam on both bow. The one's just a carbon riser, the other one's your aluminum riser.
Right.
But they did a great job with vibration on the aluminum bow. I mean, it is dead. Yeah. It's quiet. But at your longer draw lengths, you feel that cam.
Yeah.
You know, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
But no, they put out a really nice bow.
Yeah. I was just going to say with the aluminum one, if you like the way, you know, if you like the way the carbon elite shoots, but you maybe don't like the hand shock, or that's something that's like a deal breaker for you, like it is for me. The aluminum one would basically be the same kind of thing, but more dead in hand. It's just a little bit heavier.
Yeah, it's very dead.
Yeah. So cool. Well, we'll talk about the Hoyt, the other Hoyt that we shot, which was the Hoyt VTM 31. Yeah. I really like that one. It feels a lot like the RX-7.
It's the same build, basically. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's the HBX Pro Cam, so it's the same cam, same string cable system. They redesigned the aluminum riser a little bit this year from last year. Some of the cutouts are slightly different, but if you looked really close, the bridging is heavier and wider and thicker on the upper part of the riser. So the reason they did that was to help with vibration. So they took a bow, which the Ventum Pro from last year, that was very dead in your hand, and actually killed that a little bit more.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the riser is absolutely different from last year's bow. The grip's a little bit different. And they again, it's just, I mean, it's that HBX Pro cam, so it's just silky smooth.
Right. So I think in shooting that, like, what I wrote down was like dead in hand, and then super smooth overall draw. Like, that's the one thing I love about the Hoyts, like Wilson was saying earlier, is that, Mathews, you'll often get like light at the front, then it's like backloaded and you hit that hump, right? You kind of drop into the back wall. With the Hoyts, both of them, whether it was the RX-7 or the VTM, it was like you almost got a consistent load, and it got just a little heavier as you kind of went, but it was never like a big jump to where you could just kind of draw smooth all the way back. And I would say if you're a person who has shot the RX-7 and you really liked it, but maybe you're not in the carbon price range or whatever, the VTM is like the one that I would kind of move to with the quickness, because you're going to get a lot of the same stuff that you're looking for, just in an aluminum riser and just a super shootable bow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from a bow tech, I like that they put the hole in the riser for your
It's all about you, Wilson.
For your rest. Because like on the carbon bows, whether it's limb driven or cable driven, your cable from your
drop away
hits your riser.
Yeah, it's always wrapped around that bridge.
Yeah.
So it is kind of cool they cut that little slot in there now.
It's like a silly thing they changed that I'm like, oh, I like that.
Right. And so the next one, and I'm not doing these necessarily in order and not in rank. I'll give you my personal ranking at the end as to how I felt about each of them. But the next one we'll talk about is the Darton Prelude 32. And this one to me was kind of like the dark horse, right? So Darton, and we were talking about this as we were setting up to like record the videos and the podcast and stuff, is that it's one of those, bow companies that is so steeped in like archery history, right? Like that you're not shooting a bow out on the market that Darton hasn't influenced in some way, shape, or form for the most part, right? And yet you don't hear a lot about them. And whenever you start thinking about flagship model bows, they don't often kind of pop up in people's minds. And I'm guilty of that as well. And so we had one of those set up. It's a speed bow. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect, because I don't think I've ever shot a Darton. So I was kind of like, it's kind of a wild card. I'm not sure like how it's going to feel. And man, when I picked it up and drew it back, it was probably, out of all the bows we shot, probably especially for a speed bow, probably the smoothest drawing bow that we picked up today. Super dead in hand.
Yep.
The back wall was super solid. And when you got it back for a speed bow, sometimes a speed bow will want to, like, you got to pay attention because it might want to get off on you. You know what I mean? And this thing was rock solid, man. And I left being pleasantly surprised and probably most surprised at that one. And I'll give my rankings at the end, that one made the move that it did and kind of beat out some of the other bows that I've historically liked. Yeah.
Now the Dartons so Randy Kitts from Black Eagle bought the company, I believe it was 2 years ago. And he's putting a lot of effort into building up a shooting team right now and just kind of getting the name back out there, redesigning the bows. I mean, even from the logos that used to be on a bow, it's now completely different. And last year he had a bow, the Spectre E, and he redesigned that bow. So that was a bow that existed that he got his hands on, redid everything on. And that was a great bow. I loved it. The only thing with the Spectre, it wasn't a super fast bow, which I don't really care. But it hung right there with all the other flagships, just a couple feet per second slower. So this year, he kind of took that Spectre E and revamped it again and put some speed into it.
Right.
So now the cam is much more aggressive than the Spectre, but with that being said, it's smooth. Like, you don't really feel it.
No.
And it's literally, there's the fastest bow out there besides one other bow that we carry.
Right. And when you told me it was a speed bow when I picked it up, because you said that as I was picking it up, I picked it up. And the first thing I said was like, oh man, I like the riser. I like the grip because
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for that just like bare riser feel. And it has that. And then you were like, this is a speed bow. And I was like, oh man, this thing's going to be a bear to pull back,
It's
But
not.
No. And the thing is like, what I like about the Hoyt is that you get a little load as you go, but it's never overbearing.
Yeah.
You just get into that back wall nice and smooth. This one, I don't know if you felt the same way, Wilson, but like as I'm pulling back, it felt like it never got any heavier than it did at the beginning. So it was just like one constant kind of pull. Like once you, this isn't technical, but like once your kind of shoulder and back muscles kind of settled into like pulling it back, you didn't have to change the effort all the way until you got into the back wall.
Well, you'll see a lot of guys when they draw, they want to start off with a good draw form and they have their elbow up. And then as soon as they get to that heavy part, you'll see their elbow drop back down to get that last little bit, which I tend to do quite a bit. This one didn't seem like you had to put any extra force into that draw.
Yeah. And it's super quiet, super dead in your hand. I mean, it's a great feeling bow.
Yeah. What did you think about it when you shot it?
No, I liked it a lot. Going back to an aluminum riser, heavier bow, immediately I want to shoot it really far. Like I want to go outside and shoot it at 120
We only
yards.
have one right now, so we're waiting for more to come in. So,
because that's what we would get a bow and we'd shoot it inside and we'd get it tuned, and then we're like, all right, let's go shoot it to see, because it feels like it would be super stable shooting out at far distances, which I like. That's why I'm like my Hoyt is I took it to the range and shot, and I think I shot 4 8s at 90 yards, which I've never done ever.
Right.
And I mean, I'm shooting a big, huge target.
Right.
But it was so stable out at far distances without a stabilizer on it, with anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
the other thing I like about that bow is that it shot, and again, I'll give my rankings here in a minute, but like it shot with everything that we shot in better than a lot of them. And it comes in at a price point that someone can get into, like a top line flagship bow.
Yeah, the price point to me, you can't beat that.
I mean,
it's
you're
like
$1,049 out the door.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of your aluminums are now another $200 to $300 more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, for, in today's world, a friendly price point, I mean, it is a heck of a bow.
Yeah, and I heard some guys talking about like, well, now I got to always get a bow that has the Picatinny rails and all that stuff. Well, I don't know of any company now that is only switching to Picatinny mounts. Nobody is. No. Because that's only a select few bows.
Yeah.
And so that is a terrible reason to not buy a bow.
Yeah.
And I looked that guy in the eyes and I was like, you'd better take that back.
So
I'm going to fight you.
It's a bad reason to not buy a bow.
You guys might not even notice, but on the Darton, he did cut out a dovetail on the back of the riser.
Oh,
here.
yeah, I didn't see that.
Now you can run an integrated QAD.
Okay.
So Darton just came out with their own branded integrated QAD to go on here. So that is dovetailed out. So if a guy did want to run an integrated rest on here, they can.
Okay.
So yeah, they put a lot of technology into this bow.
Yeah, great shooting bow. I think we have one more. Oh yeah, but how could we forget Mathews, since we all have shot Mathews for as often as we have. We shot the Mathews Phase 4 29-inch, or I'm sorry, 29-inch axle to axle on that one. And the way I think the first thing I mentioned was it feels like a Mathews.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're a Mathews person, like through and through, and you've loved the Mathews that you've shot for the past 6-7 years, whatever it is, you're going to like this one too. It's like the draw cycle feels the same. You get that normal quiet, Mathews. You get that normal dead in hand, doesn't go anywhere. You do get the Mathews weight a little bit, right? It's always just a little bit of a heavier bow. Like I said, I shot Mathews for years and loved them. Now, the one thing I will say that was surprising to me, because I haven't shot my personal, because I still have my old Mathews, the VXR 28, I think is what I have. And I hadn't shot that since this fall when I set it up just as a backup bow in case something happened with my Hoyt. And so it did take me a little bit by surprise, like how pronounced the dump into the back wall is.
Yeah.
Just because I got so used to how smooth that Hoyt is. And it's not that it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. Again, it's all preference. Like that's one of those things I would probably overlook because of how dead in hand it is, because that's the thing that I prioritize. But if someone really doesn't, if they struggle with getting back and staying on target, through their draw cycle, that might be a bow they might want to consider shooting some other things just to kind of try them out. But overall, awesome shooting bow. Mathews rarely ever makes something that doesn't shoot well.
So. No, I mean,
feels solid. Like I feel like you can beat it up. It can bounce around in your truck. Like
I could
it
break
is such
brush
a
with that
solid built bow.
Yeah.
So what do you think, AJ?
It's a great bow. I mean, it's interesting as a shop owner seeing different customers coming in that aren't biased shoot the different bows. Some guys gravitate right towards the Mathews. Other guys gravitate right towards a Hoyt, or could be the Elite or the Darton. We seen probably about a 50-50 split between Mathews and Hoyt. And one customer will say how smooth one is versus the other one. Then 30 minutes later, another customer comes in and he's saying the polar opposite.
Right.
So, it's just a different feel from all these different bows.
Right.
And for some guys, a little light bulb goes off above their head, like ding, that's the one. This feels good to me. Yeah. So you can't really predict it. Everybody puts out a good bow now. Yeah. There are no bad bows.
Yeah.
It's
just bad shooters.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much has to do with just personal preference. Yeah. What feels better in your hand, the grip, the balance of the bow, the draw cycle. This is personal preference.
Yeah. I think for me, again, like they all shot well. They all felt pretty balanced. I mean, some were a little bit more, top heavy or whatever, and that's to be expected because they're all, different. But there wasn't anything that was like dramatic to me. You know what I mean? They all felt good. Like we talked about a little bit, like the different deadness in hand. Yeah. Like you could tell a little bit of that. The draw cycle, the back wall, that was one thing that I did notice though too, is like all the back walls felt good.
Yeah.
They're very similar.
They were.
Everything this year seems very similar and like not super squishy.
Yeah, because that was the one thing I've always struggled with primes was just like how I always felt like their back wall was super squishy. Right. And I just always felt like I could keep drawing if I really wanted to. You know what I mean?
Which I was the opposite with primes.
Really?
Yeah, you get in my back wall and I feel like I could just pull all the way through.
The point AJ was just making. Yeah. Two guys that shot the same exact bows and thought the two different things about the back wall.
It's personal preference.
Which if you're getting a new bow, and I've said it, I'll say it, and I say it all the time, like, and that's why I like AJ's shop is you come and shoot all of them.
Yeah.
Give them some cash first.
Right.
Because for the archery tech, you got to set up each bow, but come and shoot every bow and feel which one feels the best for you.
Yeah.
So, and if you're brand loyal, like, try to leave it at home.
Right.
And just come with an open mind.
If you truly want to get the bow that's like the right one for you at that moment that's of that year or whatever, it's like 100%, because I've been stubborn in the past where it's like I just wanted to shoot a Mathews because that was what I was comfortable with or whatever.
Right.
And it wasn't until last year when you put that Hoyt in my hand, it was like, here, try this. And I was like, in my mind, when you were handing it to me, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny watching guys take a shot with a particular bow and they just sort of stare at the bow after the shot.
I did. I was bewildered. I was like, what? I was like, you kidding me? It's a carbon fiber bow with no hand shock? Like, get out of here. But so as far as how I ranked these, and I'm going to remove the RX-7 because that's the one that I currently shoot. So that one's, is my number one. It's the one that I shot this year. It's the same bow for the most part, and it shoots awesome, and I love that bow. But so we'll take that one out of the running. So the one that I actually liked the best outside of the Hoyt carbon was actually the Hoyt VTM. Mm-hmm. And not a surprise though, because the draw cycle felt the same to me. It was super dead in hand. It was all the things that I liked, and it just felt very similar to the bow that I shot.
It's very familiar to what you're shooting already.
Surprising though, I shouldn't say surprisingly, much to my personal surprise, my second favorite bow was the Darton Prelude. Mm-hmm. Like that one to me was just a straight shooter and actually felt very similar to both of the Hoyts.
Right.
Like even though it was a speed bow, like I felt like I got a lot of the same qualities I look forward to. I like the way you said it, Wilson. Like it checked a lot of the same boxes.
Yeah.
It just may not have been to the same magnitude maybe as the RX-7, but like all the same boxes were getting checked. Right. That was my second favorite.
And you get more speed to shoot your 700 grain arrows you shoot.
I don't shoot 700 grain arrows anymore, dude. I still shoot semi-heavy arrows, but I also have like Tyrannosaurus Rex arms with a short draw length. So there's also that.
45% FOC.
Right. Yeah. It's 100. I just got fletchings in the back.
Yeah, he's got a 3-inch cut.
Yeah. My next favorite, so my number 3 bow would have been the Mathews Phase 4. Because I'm just familiar with Mathews, and it felt like a Mathews.
Right.
You know, it's like it's super dead. Again,
Yep.
I prioritized dead in hand, and that thing was super dead in
Yep.
hand. And then the number 4 bow would have been the Elite Era. I did like the carbon fiber bow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought it felt good. I thought it shot well. There was just a little bit of hand shock stuff that, you know, that would make me choose some of the other bows ahead of it. And then the Elite Omnia was the final one. And it's not to say that it didn't shoot well. It was
Right.
just compared to like what I personally like with all the different bows.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of
Right.
ranked. But so that's my top 5. So you've shot all of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, how do you feel about like, you know, where do you kind of rank them? And I know it's hard for you to rank because like you're looking through the lens of like what people are looking for, you know what I mean? But from like a shop standpoint, like how do you feel about, well, maybe about my rankings? Are they somewhat accurate?
I'd say they're very accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
100%.
Nice. So that I think is the show for today. Anything to add, Wilson? Anything we missed?
How long's well, this is totally random, but how long have you been open now?
We're going on 6 years.
Okay.
6
Yeah.
years. Nice.
Yeah.
Party this summer? Anniversary party?
Yeah. We should.
We should. We should party it up.
I'm ready now.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I appreciate you letting me come in here today on, you know, a morning here right after Christmas.
Always.
Messing around with all the bows. Appreciate Wilson flying in specifically for this.
Yeah, this is the only reason I came
You
out.
know, no, it wasn't to see his family or anything. It was to come do this. And appreciate all you guys listening out there. If you haven't yet, if you're local, head out to Bob and AJ's archery shop, shoot some bows, come out and talk deer hunting with them. It's just a great place to kind of hang out and be around a bunch of dudes that live, eat, and breathe archery. If you're not local, I will make sure to put the link to the website in the podcast show notes. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. I'd be super appreciative if you do those few things for me. Before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to the partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Spartan Forge, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.